So, initial thoughts on Anaheim and kind of what they bring?
Well, yeah, when you think about Anaheim, you think about the big line. I mean, that's where it starts and ends, when you think about Anaheim for me.
What about Corey Perry and how he's played over the last month? I mean, he's got to be one of those guys that's just
Yeah,
really tough
we don't get to see a lot of the East, other than just on TV, but of the players that have come through in the last little while, especially the last few months, he's been as good as anybody. And obviously, if he had a vote, he'd be my MVP vote in the obviously for the West.
When you get to this time of the year, you're always looking at the matchups, and how does your team match up with this one?
Well, the matchup probably the same as anybody else with all the teams. We're all stacked up 99 points. I got the question yesterday. Who would you rather play? It doesn't matter. They're all good teams. So, they've got the big line, and that'll be key for us to stop them. But they've got on the people like Solani and Koivu who are dynamic players and good players. So we're going to have to really bring a real good team game because they can put some bucks in the net.
Pretty attractive matchup, though. Probably the number one offensive line against arguably the number one defensive line in the league. Defensive pairing.
Well, that's probably the storyline is the Suits and Webbs versus the big line, but it'll be a big challenge. It's not only just those two guys, but it'll be the five guys on the ice for us, and obviously our goaltender will have to continue to be as good as he has been.
Barry, the elephant in the room is that how important is it to get past the first round?
Well, for us, it's the next step. I mean, sooner or later we're going to break through that. If it's and that's been our goal since losing out last year is to take the next step, and hopefully we can take it this year. From our standpoint, that's our goal. If we get it accomplished or not, that'll be really the next step. I think Phoenix is in the same boat as us. They haven't done it for 12 or 13 years, something like that. So,
do you like the fact that you know where the major threat is, and does it make your planning any easier going into this series?
Most teams when you play them, you know the major threats, but in every series there's always a new twist, a guy that steps up. Last year, you get the big goals. I thought Andrew Ladd was a real key guy that got unnoticed in the Chicago series. Obviously Hosek did a lot of damage, but Andrew Ladd, when they moved him from the third line to the first line, that made a big adjustment to us to have to handle that line, and they moved people around. So it's subtle things like that sometimes can really have a major impact on how you look at teams.
You have more options then that way to make adjustments as you need to this year?
Well, we're starting to get some bodies back. Doesn't mean that they're going to be helpful bodies right out of the bat because they're trying to catch up to the speed of the game. They've been out for a while, but we have some bodies that we haven't had for a while. So hopefully we move people around a little bit to give us some success in those areas so that we can have some good matchups. And you're not always going to have the good matchups. Teams will double shift guys. You'll see teams changing on the fly. There's some deception stuff where centermen will skate out to the dot and put the brakes on and step out and get away from some matchups like that. So it'll be an interesting matchup. I think I think we've played them pretty well. They've played us pretty well the last couple of years. So.
Gary, now that it's all kind of said and done and everything's kind of shaken out, how do you feel about the way that it has all kind of shaken out for you guys?
That's probably the best way to say it, how it was shaking out. A few days ago we didn't know if we were going to be in fourth. We didn't know if we were going to be in fifth. We just watched a game and we're going, okay, it looks like, last night when I got off, it looks like Anaheim or Detroit. I'm sure Chicago's going to win that game. Detroit hasn't been going, and you watch Detroit play the way they can, and all of a sudden, Chicago's, sitting at home watching Dallas see if they're playing, and it's been interesting. But when we looked at it, it was just for us getting in. I mean, it was a battle just to get in, and you saw that with Anaheim. You saw that, with Chicago and Dallas and the Rangers the other night. Those are hard games to win, like Chicago had today. You're in your own building. Everybody can feel the tension and the anxiety, and one thing goes wrong, and then all the bad thoughts start to come, and it's a tough game, just like the Columbus game. It was a tough game for us. But it's the way it's shaken out is it's fine.
You've
Just
had,
have to deal with it.
you've had strong finishes in the past and felt good going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
It seems that this team, there's more of an expectation for success. when
Well,
this
I
guy
think
gets
that's, yeah, I think that's, last year we felt that we were on the verge of getting over that hump. We made the Fisher deal, and then Gotch and a few guys have gone down. So that was really key. If we don't make that deal, the Fisher deal, we don't get into playoffs. I can tell you that right now. We don't even have a sniff. We have to go 14. Before last night's game, we had to go in the last 20 games, 14, 3-3. And you look at I didn't realize it till I was just sitting there and I'm going, okay, and looking at the competition and that, and just to get in. So we've played well and hard for a long time, and so we were feeling confident that it doesn't matter who we go up against. We've had tough competition. It's prepared us. It's also prepared them too. Anaheim was scrambling here the last little while to get in, and they've done a good job. So I think all the teams are prepared. Now can you re-engage and get right back at it is going to be real key.
Seems like every you guys have gone in the playoffs with some sort of injury to some sort of key player. You have kind of like a minor one to Marty right now. Are
Yeah.
you expecting him to go for you?
I am at this point, yeah. I haven't seen Marty today, but hopefully we go in and Marty's ready to go, and then that's a big hole for us right there. Last couple of games, Marty was playing so well, and then we've missed him the last couple of games. That affects your power play. It affects your 5-on-5 play. And he's one of the guys that can break things open for you a little bit with his speed, and has got a great work ethic. So.
Any sense of disappointment you have to overcome here in not getting the 4 seed in home ice for this round?
No, we there was a little bit of disappointment because you could say they were going to force it would be Anaheim to come here, and once we get the schedule, I think it's going to be out what time, Jerry? Later tonight. Once we get that scheduled, then there's an extra travel. They might have to go there and then come back. And we lost that, so we're going to have to start there. But that's fine. We've been home for a long time, so from a standpoint of road weary, we were road weary back in January and February. So right now we're not road weary. We haven't done much travel.
What have you learned along the way as a playoff coach that maybe you didn't know a few years back?
Momentum swings are huge, and how that affects your psyche, how it affects your ability to deal with it. We've gone in different series. We've been different series have been different animals for us. I mean, we went into our first series, we were such big underdogs, and we were just playing, had no fear. I mean, we were playing with no fear, no expectations. We had two teams that had lots of expectations right after the lockout, and we limped into the playoffs. And those teams, we didn't have a lot of adversity all year, and then all of a sudden we had a lot of adversity and we had a lot of injuries, and we didn't deal with them very good at all. The next couple of series, with Detroit, we played them real hard, and just at the brink, you could tell that they've been there many times, and they were able to just do it. They were a little deeper, but they were able to sustain a lot of stuff that we're throwing at them. It wasn't like, all of a sudden we're coming up with a change up and they go, oh, we never seen that before. That's really going to throw us off. It wasn't anything that we could really do that way, but played them real hard and forced them to elevate their game, and then they rolled to the Stanley Cup. Last year was the most difficult, obviously, because Chicago, we actually had them on the brink and we let them off the ropes, and they end up waking up and going. And to me, that was everyone has been different. But last year, we went in and we felt very confident we were going to beat Chicago. I mean, probably most people weren't picking us to beat Chicago, but we were confident that we could. And this team is very similar to that. That no matter who we play, we feel very confident that we can beat you.
How about 5-4 games with the Ducks this
Yeah.
year? I mean, is this a series that maybe is going to be a little more offensive than some others we've seen you in?
I think the playoffs are sometimes a little different than the regular season. I mean, the Ducks, last couple of games, they haven't given up very many goals. It's against LA. I mean, 2-1 games. They're all 1-goal games. There wasn't a lot of scoring. I think both teams really locked down. I think in the playoffs, more so than the regular season, you'll have guys have a lot more detail to the defensive part of the game. They'll block shots that in the regular season they might not throw their face in front of a shot. They will in the playoffs, and sometimes that's a difference. So I don't know. Yeah, sometimes games and series are dictated by events. A team is trying to catch the other team and chase the game a little bit. Team gets a quick goal, and all of a sudden they get a power play. Now you're down 2-0. Now you start to have to chase the game because you're down a little bit, and it changes your whole game plan, if you will. So I think it's the playoffs are about adjustments, and they're not big adjustments. Sometimes they're subtle adjustments. They're matchups. They're changes in reads. Say through a neutral zone on the forecheck. Some teams have tendencies. How you're dumping the puck in and how teams are breaking out. Those type of things those subtle things can make a big difference sometimes.
You have a sense of who you're going to see in goal for them?
I think just, I was trying to catch up to all, they've had some goaltending changes with, Emery's been injured, and Hiller's been backing up, but Hiller's still going through a little bit of the vertigo. So I think Dan Ellis is going to be the guy that's going to start the series for sure. I think Emery was sort of their number one guy a little bit. They seemed to ride him a little bit more. And then I think he had a little bit of I'm guessing it's a back or hip problem, and Danny's gone in there and played very well.
That's going to be, I would think, a little strange to see him.
We haven't seen him that much. Obviously, Ellie was in the other conference. We saw him in Tampa Bay, and he played against us in Tampa Bay. And then we saw him here because he gets after the trade deadline. We played the Ducks, and they started Hiller, and then he went in. So it's really the last 2 times that we've seen him. But we know Danny pretty well. He knows us pretty well. So
is familiarity a positive for him or for us?
I don't know. You have to ask probably him that, and for some guys it'll be for us, and for some it'll be for him. I mean, there's certain guys that know him pretty well and might have had some success against him, and there's some guys that he knows very well and he's had good success. So it's probably a neutral type of question where it probably works out 50-50.
Barry, does the style of play in the playoffs, you've talked about home ice, but does that in some ways take away the advantage just because of how tight it is and just the way the travel works out for both teams?
It does a little bit. I mean, home ice is you don't have as big an advantage. I think that in the past the rinks were a little different and all that. The old Boston Gardens and all that. The rinks are pretty well the same. The atmosphere and the intensity are same for both teams. Some teams get a little bit more energized at home. We're one of them. We've had a good home record, but for the most part, it gets limited a little bit. I think sometimes in some series, the home ice actually actually can be a little bit of a disadvantage for some teams. In terms of expectations. I mean, and you saw sort of the same thing I was talking to about the Chicago game. For example, Vancouver made the expectations are so high right now that anything less than the cup is pure failure probably in the minds of most people in Vancouver. Home ice advantage might not be home ice advantage for those guys because you might feel a little bit of that anxiety and all that just as you sensed it in the Chicago game. Good.
Thanks, Barry.